So we're here. Welcome
Yeah,
to
we're here.
Unbarred.
Unbarred, baby. What
Yes.
episode are we on? Are we on like 6?
Oh,
We're just fucking killing it.
this is episode 6.
Damn.
Man, this has been extremely fun, man. Doing
Yeah.
this.
I I'm glad. I've also had fun. I can't believe that we've already done 6. We've been hella consistent pretty much every
Yeah.
other week other than like when I went to the wedding. So I like that. I'm trying to build more consistency in my life.
Oh yeah.
And that this helps a lot.
Yeah.
Cuz I'll like do I think the one thing that was consistent in my life was my walks with Tara. That was probably the only thing that I always did for 12 years. I can't think of anything else. Maybe riding my bike for like a few years, but I fall off stuff, and then it takes a while to like get that routine back going.
Yeah.
So
Like, I mean, yeah, trying to get routine could be very tough at times. I guess it depends on like what you're doing in your life and if you have like issues going on or something something shifts you out of whatever routine you have. It takes a while to like get back, but like having a routine is actually, for me, like whether it's a workout routine or a routine where you want to stay focused on a book and finish it out, I think it's helpful and it builds character. But at the same time, being able to move um within chaos is actually a skill too. In a way that takes a lot. I think that's kind of like what I'm trying to learn more of, because like sometimes things can shift you out of whatever routine you have, and you got to be able to navigate through like the chaos sometimes. If that could be a skill, a good skill.
yeah, that's a skill that I have. Honestly, it's a trauma response that I have. That's now a
Yeah,
skill, right? Like
yeah.
as a kid, shit was like constantly. I want to say constantly, but I lived in a lot of chaos when I was younger, from being homeless or in and out of foster homes or just moving and being able to build relationships with people and to be able to like with people quickly and to be able to just start over
Hmm.
constantly starting over, or having to figure out how to do things on my own when I'm like a child or a teenager. uh, it it was it was something that I just had to do. That's what we were talking. I think we were talking about that on one of our drives when you were out here.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about how I never thought about it, right? I wasn't like thinking, "Oh, my life's fucked up. Like this sucks." It was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I just got to get this stuff done." So
Yeah.
figure it out. And looking back now, like I realize that was a trauma response. But
Yeah.
as an adult, which it was a trauma response, and it may have been a maladaptive one. Uh, Now I recognize it and can use it as a
That's
skill, like you're
skill.
saying,
That's
right?
skill.
Like now I can go into any kind of situation and be okay. I can. One of my favorite things is I had a friend send me like this praise for how I can just go out by myself into the world, go get dinner or go to an event and not know anybody, or just move to another city and not know anyone, and just make friends and
Yeah.
I'll be all right. And that, to your point, like that is a skill, right? Like being able to adapt to whatever the situation calls for.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's being able, like, I guess you have, because of like all the uncertainty that you lived through as a young person, that's something that kind of may help you even now, because I think one of the biggest fears for us people in society is uncertainty. Excuse me. Yeah, so is uncertainty. I know we talked about that in the past, where like not knowing what's on the other side kind of like gets people like unraveled. And even myself, sometimes it's like you're like, you really want to know what's going on. What is the next phase of, my life, my career? If there's a change, unexpected change, um, you're pondering about like, okay, what happens? But sometimes life forces you to deal with uncertainty and to develop that skill because you have no choice.
Yeah.
So I think I've been able to move better when it comes to uncertainty, and it actually empowers you. And like uncertainty is actually like a really it could be it could be something good because it's like I used to say, I would say that you're in creation mode, so you don't know what's happening, so you can kind of like determine which way things go by your decisions. You're like, literally, this decision can bring you here or bring you there. What your thoughts are and what you want to do, you move, in the direction of what your desires are, and you can make your life where where you want it how you want to make it. Like, doing the podcasting, I think that came from uncertainty because I'm just in this phase of my life where I want to be in a creative space. And I felt like, I think you came up with this. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a perfect opportunity to develop skill sets as far as being able to be more in tune with social media, video editing, and whatever other skills that like what we're doing develops into. So yeah, this is exciting.
Yeah, man. The I forget that the podcast just came out of nowhere. Like this was
Mhm.
not planned. We were just like, well, we started the Unbarred coaching and
Yeah,
then like, well, the best way to get publicity is to just be out there. So like,
yeah.
yeah, we just started this randomly. I like your point about how well we chose to do this thing at some random point, and then because we're doing this thing, we're developing a bunch of other skills because
Yes,
of this one thing that will be
exactly.
useful in other places.
Exactly.
So
I'm looking at your setup right now. Your setup, you look like that's definitely like you definitely gotta do something with that
bro, that's
setup.
why I was trying to get you to sit on the other side so we could do a
Yeah,
one live when you were here. I was
yeah.
like, let's get one going. We could have sat
Uh,
it up. We
I
could have
know.
sat here across, like
I
have a
could.
little whiskey and just chatted.
Yeah, man. We was. It was a lituation. All was it 3 days? I was there,
Yeah,
man. It was just
yeah.
mad fun,
I'm glad
and
you had fun, man.
yeah. So like, man, the Boston just going into like, how you say it over there? Is it Boston or I say Boston. I don't know if that's the proper way. I don't know, New York way.
Boston?
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
Bostonians
Boston.
have a pretty. They don't have the same accent as New Yorkers, obviously, but they have the same like inflection in some places. So like
Okay.
how you say Boston, like they say it like that. Some people say
Yeah,
Boston. It
yeah,
depends, but you
Boston.
get.
Yeah. But yeah, I just it sounds like the Boston, and I heard Boston and whatever. But like just going to Boston and just kind of like you know just seeing the city. Of course, there's like similarities to New York, and there's also differences, but interesting city to me. Very interesting. Like
Yeah, let's talk about
yeah,
it. So for those of you who don't know, which is no one knows,
yeah,
Derby came out to Boston. He stayed with me. He stayed in this room. Uh, and we just saw a little bit of the city. We had dinner with one of our friends slash business owners, nonprofit runner, and you got to meet some of my folks.
yeah, yeah. So it was first of all, you got some dope friends that I met. Of course, Marcus, which is like seems like a dope person.
Shout out
Seems
to
like,
Marcus Penny,
yeah, the
Dirty Penny.
conversation. um, he looked like he's like 6'5", You know, it made people made from far seem like a threatening person, but he's actually like a really like soft spoken person, and it was great conversation, and I appreciate him like showing me around the city. So dope person. But yeah, and your other friends that came out, we was at the bar. I think the last night. Um, or your friends came by too. We ended up leaving the bar, going to a party spot, which was dope and like very um yeah. I haven't been to a place where people were actually dancing, like really like dancing for real in a minute.
Yeah,
So that was like good times. And Boston, of course, I learned that it's a college city, if that's what you
yeah,
call it, a college city. So
yeah,
I could see why a lot of just good vibes and just like party, you know, with the college students. So that was good times. Um, what else, man? Oh, we went to the I think there was a bar the second night, and like how they put the menu together, it was like what you call it, like a science
Oh, you're talking about Miracle of
table.
Science. Yeah, and they had the
Yeah,
periodic table of
science
elements.
tables because
Yeah.
of all the, what was it, Harvard, right?
Yeah, MIT and Harvard. It's
Um,
down the
M-
street from MIT.
so MIT, so just for all of the smart people, so the whole bar was set up to like cater to those. These people smart, man. You going to MIT and Harvard, forget about it.
Yeah. That's all Cambridge
uh,
is like some of the most elite thinkers, quote unquote, in our
yeah,
country. Uh
yeah. I think there was a conference going on because I met a professor that same day, and he talked about like the culture in that area in Boston where colleges and academics have a big influence on the overall
yeah.
culture. And
Yeah.
you even said like economically, right? I think you and Marcus
Oh,
was talking about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
For
like
better or
the
worse. For better and
yeah.
for worse. It's a
So
both.
does like the colleges drive the economics for the
Oh, yeah, 100%. The and not just the colleges, right? There's also a huge medical world here.
Mm,
So there's a ton of top tier hospitals that also will drive the cost up because it's expensive to do health. And then just having colleges in general, so that there's, don't quote me, go ahead and do
mm.
your own homework, but there's something like there's upwards of 50 something colleges in the greater Boston area. And then on top of that, only 3 or 4 of them are public schools. So almost all of them are private schools. And most of them are like really elite schools. So Simmons, Suffolk, Emmanuel is a liberal arts school. Uh, Obviously, Harvard, MIT, Wheelock, uh, Mass Art, or whatever the art school is called. So there's a lot of sure, there's going to be some folks that don't come from privileged backgrounds, but most of the people that are going to go to schools like that come from some bit of money or some
Mm,
bit of class, and that's going to drive obviously the price up too. So because there's so many students and it's almost all private schools,
mhm.
that's that's a lot of wealth in this city. And then on top of all of that, this is just an old ass city, and it's been it's historically been um, a very wealthy area. Like people of wealth have come here for centuries, not centuries. Yeah, for centuries, 100 years. Yeah, for multiple sets of hundreds of years.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. What was it, Brookline? Which which
Yes, we were in Brooklyn.
which was like pretty wealthy, right? Or
Oh
no?
yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that's where, what's his name? Marcus lives around.
yeah.
That's the area.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Marcus
it's
lives out there.
yeah. Now you can tell just by the structures of the buildings and like just the stuff, everything set up. You could tell is like very wealthy.
Yeah.
Um, Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've never just like talking about just the walk, just the places we've been to. I mean, I think it's been years since I've been like the only person of not even black person, the only person of color
Yeah.
in a room. Like in
Yeah.
any room. I've like we
Yeah.
multiple rooms where we're the only you know people of color in the room. So that was like that was a different experience, especially being from New York. Like I was saying, there's at least usually one person across the room where we could give a head nod, like, "Yeah,
Yep.
I'm
Not
here
here,
too."
man.
I was like, "Oh
Yeah,
man,
we were in a lot of places that are predominantly white.
yeah,
There is a large Asian population in Boston. That's obviously there's folks that live here and have been here a long time, and there's also a lot of students coming from like international students coming here because of the colleges. But then with outside of that, like Boston is pretty white and it's getting whiter actually. So a lot of people of color are leaving Boston. That's like we're now in Lynn, so we no longer live in Boston. And part of that is because it's just becoming so expensive and not really worth it.
yeah,
It'll also like where we were living, which is Dorchester, where we lived was like I didn't take you out there and I probably should have now that I think
yeah."
about it. But like that's the area that historically has been like the black and brown area.
Okay,
Years ago, it was the Jewish area, like the Roxbury area. But like as trends change, Caribbean folk moved into Roxbury and Dorchester, and then black folk have always lived out there. They're in Mattapan. But now those areas are being gentrified and it's becoming expensive. So a lot of people are leaving Boston and going to these suburb towns outside of Boston. Uh, so like places like Brockton, Lynn, um, um, I don't know if Medford's one of those places, but definitely like we call them the North Shore and the South Shore, so north of Boston and south of Boston. Uh, so the black population, the black and brown population, is shrinking actively. I think in the last, I was reading something in the last 20 years, the population has shrank by like 15 to 20%,
hmm
which is which speaks to what you're talking about, right? Like it's uncomfortable to feel like the only black person in a room, right? It's uncomfortable to walk into a bar and to be told into a bar that
yeah,
we went to there's a bar in Boston that's built into the side of Fenway um stadium, and you can look out and you see the fields. And
yeah.
we walk into this bar and we're like getting seated and this woman just looks at us and says, "Oh, you look like you should be out there on the field."
Yeah, meaning that we should we look like the players. That's what I interpret
And
it.
that's exactly what she meant. That's
Yeah,
exactly what she meant. Because I
yeah,
said, "Oh, because we look like really great baseball players, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, you guys look like you would be playing baseball." And
yeah.
I do not look like I would be playing baseball. Like,
Exactly, exactly. I mean, if she told me I look like a football player, I get more that
yeah,
than baseball. But
yeah. Maybe yeah, for me, maybe basketball
yeah,
at most, but I
yeah.
do not look like a
You know
baseball
what?
player.
I remember for the most part, like I wasn't uncomfortable. I think it was because it was good vibes and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
were
yeah.
having conversation. I just that part when I got kind of like my mind shifted when she said that because I like no, I just kind of like was like did she just say that? So and I remember looking at you and I was trying to actually process that because I didn't even have you was kind of swift and quick with the response, so you of course you kind of made it funny and then we laughed, but like I just kind of like was trying to process because I was like, oh man,
That's
it
how
was.
it is. Like the living. So grown up. I've never grown up in. I don't want to say I never grown up, obviously, but I've rarely lived in. We were talking about this too. I've rarely lived in spaces that are all black, right? Like I've lived in places that are all Mexican. Like that's where I grew up as a young, real young, uh, and I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. But like I told you, that was the first. Mexicans were the first to call me the N word by far.
Hmm.
And then I've lived in all white places. Thankfully, I've never gone to school in all white places. So, like we said, I've never been the only person of color in a space when I'm learning, other than maybe in college. But I have been in all white spaces, living in Boston, uh, and maybe even living in San Francisco. And those kinds of things that people say, it's not like they're trying to be.
Yeah.
Uh, I wouldn't. That's not even like discrimination or prejudice. It's like a. It's just like a. There's just stereotypes, right? And
Yeah.
people
Stereotypes.
people
Yeah.
think in stereotypes sometimes, and it's maybe because had it happen from such an early
Yeah.
age. I'm not like put out by it, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't catch me off guard because I expect it at this point because I've lived around folks
Yeah.
like this.
And I was gonna say, and sometimes when like stereotypes can even work in your benefit. I just remember being a kid and I went to like the other side of the neighborhood to play basketball, and it was like not the other side of the neighborhood, but I went somewhere. I went to another area to play some basketball, and it was like playing like in Long Island or something. I'm from Queens, and mostly mostly white kids, and I was playing. And you know how in basketball you start choosing the players you want on your team. So I was only the only black kid, and I was chosen first. I guess the assumption was that I was good in basketball, and I was pretty good. But like, I mean, in that case, it was better. I felt good being picked first than last. But I
Yeah,
guess it depends on like what's going on and like what's actually said, whether or not that stereotype is a bad one. But hey, listen, nobody wants in a game of basketball is nobody wants to be picked last. I got picked because they thought I was really good or they assumed.
and then the next time you played, you got picked last because they figured it out. No,
Nah,
I'm
exactly.
kidding. No,
Exactly.
that's a true statement for me too, right? Like people just assume that I'm good at sports in general. Well, specific sports, right? People don't think I'm good at the sports. People are constantly surprised that I'm good at soccer or that I know anything about hockey, and it's that those stereotypes are wild to
Yeah,
me because, like,
brothers. Unless like, you're not Caribbean. Like, if you were like,
oh
not
yeah,
even
yeah,
like
yeah,
a Haitian, like if you were like from like my family's Haitian, so Haitians like my pops, soccer was a big thing. So if you into soccer, I will understand that. But you being like from Cali and being from here, like yeah, that's like yeah, I don't know a lot of brothers out who are not Caribbean who's just like nasty with the soccer or who's really intrigued with hockey. So
yeah,
even in that combination is
yeah,
crazy. Like to both
yeah,
is like even like that's like 1%, brother.
yeah,
That's like
yeah,
that's
absolutely,
not
right.
likely.
And I think stereotypes, like, it's not. I I don't think I don't get mad at people for believing in stereotypes or whatever they do because that's how our brains work in general, right? Like if we didn't do stereotypes, uh, we would understand. Like,
We
if
want
you
to be
think of,
familiar with something. Something has to resonate with somebody, so that's what the stereotypes. Like that's my guessing. I have to. I have to. I need an image of how to communicate with this person.
I mean, it's even more than that, right? Like, or even more basic than that.
Hmm.
Before we even start talking about people, like if we just think about all the things that exist in the world, I'll use cats for example. So there's a whole bunch of different cats, right? Different types of cats, different families of cats, right? Like there lions are cats, tigers are
Hmm.
cats, then we have our house cats. But even in just the house cat section, there's so many different ways a cat can look. And we put all if we didn't think in stereotypes, we would have to put every single individual cat we ever encountered into its separate box, because every single cat is a separate thing, right? Like we have orange cats, black cats, gray cats, hairless cats, whatever those are called, Siamese cats. Every single one of those would have to be a different thing, and our brain can't process that. So we stereotype them into this group called cats.
Mhm.
But if we thought about every single thing in different categories, then our brain couldn't handle all the information. So we have to, like, if I see this thing with a round head and 2 ears and then kind of a long body with 4 legs and a tail, I'm gonna be like, oh, that's a cat, instead of
Yeah.
saying that's this specific thing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to humans, we do the same thing, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I think that we just look at the wrong evidence and then say, oh, all Asian drivers are bad drivers, instead of saying, oh, a lot of Asian countries have really tiny cars. And then a lot of people coming here are going and getting into these big cars with these weird traffic signs and different traffic patterns. And then they get into accidents because it can be overwhelming to drive cars like this. Instead, we just stereotype and say, oh, all Asian drivers are bad drivers. And like that stereotype misses the context of what's actually going on.
Exactly. So you start missing context, and that leads to a lot of assumptions, and you're locking people into these like into this box, or and you might miss an opportunity because you're locking people into boxes, as far as like how they can help you, or you you could work with, or sometimes it's like you're assuming, like it says, just like even with the kids who just automatically picked me first because they thought he has to be a good basketball player, and the kid who's probably a really good basketball player, who's probably better than me, is picked last, and then you lose the game. So sometimes you feeding into stereotypes is, maybe I would say a lot of times we feed into stereotypes, and it doesn't even benefit us as individuals or as a society. We're missing out on talent if
Yeah,
we strictly rely on these stereotypes.
yeah. And I like that you said talent. I think that's a really important one because we assume things. I think we also miss out on perspective, because when we
Mm,
do that stereotype thinking, that's where biases come from, right? Like we
yeah.
put all these things in a box and say, this is what's going to happen every time this thing's
Yeah.
put in there. I took those Harvard or those bias tests from Harvard or wherever they're from, and I've taken a few of them. I've taken the dark skin, light skin one, male, female, black, white. I've taken a lot of them, and I am about to brag unhumbly. I'm so unbiased. I aced all. I don't know if you can ace them, but like I got no bias on any of those scales. And I think because it's not even that I don't think in stereotypes. It's that I know that stereotypes exist. So the way that I respond to the world isn't based on the stereotypes that might exist in my head. I respond to the world with like, oh, everything's a new experience, which comes full circle back to that whole like trauma response of going into a situation not knowing what's going to happen. And because I've dealt with things and been so under resourced for dealing with those things, and I built this thing inside of me to be able to handle whatever happens, to go with the flow, to make things meld to the way that I need them to meld so that I can be successful. I've developed this way of approaching the world where I don't rely on the shortcuts of just assuming the things that I think to be true. I go into it with like a fresh set of eyes every single time. So like whatever has happened to me in the past, I don't let that affect whatever I'm going into the future. And like that comes and goes. That's like part of me getting over the fear of like even doing this podcast or
Mhm.
start a business. But for the most part, I treat every situation as a nuanced and individual situation in and of itself.
Yeah.
That can be bad, that can be good, but what it does for me is helps me be able to respond to things like some Canadian woman, or I don't even know if she was Canadian. That's just what the other lady said. But some white woman saying to me and my two black friends, "Oh, you look like you would be the baseball players on the field right now,"
Yeah.
and not getting my feelings hurt. I just
Yeah.
keep it pushing and make some jokes and allow that person to like not recognize what they're saying,
Yeah.
because I'm still gonna enjoy my day, and
Yeah.
uh,
So
utilizing that skill helps me enjoy my day.
yeah, so certain like I would say like you can naturally don't have any bias within you because you just how you kind of like navigated the world and you just recognize there may be something in you just recognize people as individuals. But what if you naturally do have uh biased tendencies, but you're able to challenge them like in real time? Um which kind of results to the same like outcomes as far as the test. So you're able to take the test and you're like, oh, I see where my brain is going. I'm going to challenge this thought and recognize that's not rooted in anything of substance, and this is just something biased based on maybe how I was brought up culturally. I think that takes a level of awareness. So the lady who said, "Oh, you guys um, look like you should be in the field," um, like I mean, I don't even think I don't think she even realized. I don't know if she meant it as a joke or whatever, but maybe she may not have she didn't have the awareness to realize that that might be taken in a certain way, and she wasn't able to challenge that thought prior to saying that. But certain people may be able to pass these tests you're talking about because they're able to like challenge whatever they recognize that as a biased thought. I don't know
So
if
most people don't even recognize that they're having biased thoughts, right? Like
yeah.
our thinking doesn't tell us, oh, this might be wrong. Our thinking just says this is what you think. And then
Mm.
people respond to the world that way. She definitely didn't understand that what she said was definitely racist at all. Like she had no idea.
Yeah, she was
And
just
and that doesn't mean that she's racist, right? I don't think that she's racist because she said something that was obviously blatantly racist. I think that she has a perception of the world, and sometimes that perception of the our perception of the world can lack some information. I don't
mm,
think that she was definitely not trying to be mean, right? She was
yeah.
just joking with us. She genuinely enjoyed speaking to us for
It's
those
us.
few moments, right? Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like she was like,
Yeah.
"I'll never talk to these inwards." Like she really thought that she was like saying something funny
Yeah.
and wanted to like enjoy this moment that
This
she had with
moment.
us.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna be the one to be like, "Bitch, you're racist. Don't say that shit." I was just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny. I'm definitely not a baseball player. I actually don't like baseball." And then make her
Yeah.
laugh.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and also like sometimes you just make a joke. We could just continue to joke and just leave it at there. And there's others who may say, "Oh, let's make this a learning experience," and then we draw out this
yeah,
whole like history of
yeah,
racism in the United States. I don't think that's at a baseball game. That's the way
yeah.
to go either.
Yeah, right?
This is a
There's
learning
there's a
experience.
time for that, right? Yeah, exactly.
That's too
That
much.
was that was not a learning experience, and it definitely wasn't a learning experience for 3 black men in a bar full of white people and, like, white bros to be trying to teach some race like that's not some
Yeah,
CRT or whatever they say, some critical
exactly.
race theory.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
it's not gonna
Oh
go
my
over well.
god.
So
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
you gotta
like
yeah. And also
yeah,
that's draining for us to be able
yeah.
to like, do I have to be
Don't
a,
you don't have to.
educator in bias, you know,
No,
viewpoints and all
no.
that in at
Not
a
when my
baseball
homie
game?
Derby is in Boston for the first time and we're trying to chill.
Exactly.
Absolutely not.
Exactly. I think we take on these tough tasks of like addressing issues, social issues, and like all these things as people of color, and we tend to like put a lot of things on our shoulders at times in moments where we don't have to.
Yeah. Like I that we've been talking about liberation a lot lately, and that's one of them, right? Like for a long time I felt like, "Oh, I have to like if someone does something, I have to let them know that it's not okay to do that thing." And wow, that is a fucking
Man,
that's tiring because
that's
all
tiring.
day, every day, someone's doing something. Like
Yeah.
I'm doing shit that I fucking shouldn't be doing. Like,
Yeah.
let alone all the
Yeah.
other folks that don't know a lot about history.
Microaggressions. Do you
Yeah,
address every microaggression? Do you address? That's it's just too
yeah,
much, and ultimately you're draining yourself, and you're creating like it's just like maybe even like it could be even result to like mental health, like because you're
yeah,
constantly looking for what you say. It's like
yeah. Yeah, like the liberal party right now. Like,
it's yeah.
bro, like finding there's always harm being done in the world. And if we
Mm,
stop and focus on every harm being done, then we get so like laser focused on all these little details that we miss out on those macro level picture things that could probably that not even probably would absolutely fix those small things, right? Like
yeah.
microaggressions are symptoms of a larger problem, and if we
Mm,
were to focus on all of the microaggressions that exist, whether it's based on race, sex, gender, whatever the things that exist,
mhm.
because every identity or every idea honestly experiences some sort of microaggression, then we'll never fix the actual problem, which is just like people need to learn how to accept one another and work with each
Exactly.
other. But because
Even
we're focused on those small things, we get lost in that and then we
yeah,
never actually fix any of these root
yeah,
causes.
exactly. And even another angle with that, like I think a lot of people are into mindfulness talk about like when we constantly focusing on negative things, it like produces like more negative experiences. So it's like
Hmm.
this let's pursue more positive thinking, gratitude. I know everybody's like, let's be more thankful for positive experiences and put more emphasis in seeing those positive experiences and like don't let the negative experiences kind of like you know like kind of like overshadow the positive. So because we end up having a distorted view of the world, because if your world is seen as like this negative journey, it's probably not beneficial for you to perceive the world. Well, I know it's not beneficial for you to perceive the world like that. You're just going to draw in more negative experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like
Yeah.
of I've had my childhood was full of negative experiences, and if
Hmm.
I looked at the world that way based on what I saw as it like
Yeah.
because it was also full of super positive experiences, but
Hmm.
like those so being a homeless kid or like being in foster care or being molested, like those are things that are huge
Hmm.
life-changing negatives.
Hmm.
And if I focused on those things, like life would be so much harder for me, right?
Yeah.
If
Like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think that back to what we were saying before, where like I never sat and thought about how hard this is or anything. I just did the things that I had to do. It helped me not get focused. I guess I've been mindful since I was a child, right? Like I love that you said one of the things you said to me was like you read all these books or you like study how to like do these different things that make people successful or healthy, and you thought that I had been reading those books because I
Yeah.
was like doing them exactly like the books say,
Well,
and I was
yeah.
like, no, I've never read any
I
self-help
thought
book.
even the conversation, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's chapter 4." Like how yeah, and I'm like, I thought you were. I thought. I mean, but like that's the thing. Like people could garner or get information in different ways. Like I'm getting it through that source, and I'm thankful for I have the source. But you could have someone else could have got it through pure intuition someone else might have got it through just listening. I don't know how people get it. But information, you get it when you need it and whatever
Yeah.
ways. I don't know
Yeah.
how. Yeah.
And I think we talked about that in one of our early episodes where like if you what you were just saying, if you're focused on the negative, obviously you're gonna see negative. But if your perspective is like just seeing those positives, or at least being uh, in the moment and recognizing things happening,
Mhm.
those are the signs that you're gonna get. So like
Yeah.
our perspective is what defines how we see the world.
Mhm.
That's kind of like a tautological explanation, but like how we look at the world will affect how we interact with the world. And
Mhm.
because I don't look at the world, I mean, I see the world as like there's a lot of negative in it, but I don't see the world as a negative place, even though negative things have happened. There's also
Mhm.
tons of positive things happening constantly too.
Mhm. Mhm.
And being able to tap into that allows for us to recognize when positive things are happening. So like
Mhm.
when you and I linked back up New Year's, or right before New Year's, and I was like, we gotta like do this project.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to do something. I don't know what that is, but let's do
Yeah.
something.
Right. So exactly.
That's like us seeing like, oh, we're seeing like all these things that are lining up, right? Not
Yes.
looking at like I had just lost my job maybe a few months before that, but never was I like, oh, this sucks. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. It was more like
Yeah.
this is kind of a blessing. Like I wasn't that happy there. uh it wasn't that I wasn't that happy there. I actually was happy there, but like there were things that kept happening that were negative that I didn't like. But there were so many positive things, like meeting you, meeting some of the other folks that I've met, and
Yeah.
doing some of the projects I've done. Those can outweigh, if I choose for them to outweigh all the bad things. But if I
Yeah.
choose the bad things to outweigh those good things, then my life's going to feel so
Yeah.
much worse.
Yeah. And that's like the thought process that I have, but you almost have to constantly remind yourself of these things because like you can like it's you can like quickly move away from like that foundation of how you want to do things, and you can go back to like some old way of viewing life. And it's like that renewal of that of the of your thoughts about viewing things in a positive light is like has to constantly be done. So you got to constantly renew that and develop that and nurture and cultivate your mindset. Um, because though, like the world kind of there's so much negative, you could easily go back. It's like there's
Yeah.
a plethora of like negative viewpoints um to that you can receive, but that positive stuff you have to really be intentional about looking for it and cultivating it.
Yeah. Cultivate positivity. And
Yeah.
I don't want, because I won't say that I was someone that was always cultivating positivity. I think this whole mindfulness movement is, I've never paid attention to what the mindfulness movement really is. But
Mhm.
if I think about what I was saying, like as a kid, there was no like, this sucks or this is good. It was like, I'm going to do this thing. Like, this thing has to get done. I'm going to do it. And that's essentially how I've lived my life. Is here's a thing, let's do it.
Mhm.
I'm not like a hard worker by any means. I've worked hard for sure in some spaces, but I don't think that I'm like this. I'll get up every day and do exactly what I got to do. No, I've also had a lot of anxiety. So there's obviously like negative stuff,
Yeah.
or even like trepidation for trying to do things and fear. But what I will say is like being in the moment helps with not being overly run by those negative feelings, right? Because when in the moment, I don't have time to like feel terrible. I'm just doing the thing that I have to get done. And for people that hear that idea, like, oh, cultivate positivity, which we just made up, but like,
Yeah,
um,
I've
but
never heard that, by the way. That was just something I just
yeah, you
said.
just made up.
Exactly. Hopefully that trends. Hashtag cultivate
Yeah,
positivity.
please put that. That's gonna be part of our. I mean, maybe we'll name that
They
the
did name
episode. Yeah.
that,
Cultivating positivity.
yeah.
But like, this isn't like a.
Yeah.
We're not saying. oh, you should only be focusing on the positive stuff. I think what's more important is just focusing on what's happening right now, right?
Mhm.
When we focus on what's happening right now, all that negative positive stuff kind of goes away and you're just
Yeah.
living and doing the thing, which is really
Yeah.
what life is, right? That's the basis of where life is, and then you swing the pendulum to either ends, right?
Exactly.
Like you live your life and then there's a bunch of things, but out of those two, like it'll swing either to the positive or to the negative,
And,
depending on how you decide to look at it.
exactly.
But if you're living it, you're just doing it, and there's no
Exactly.
you can
Yeah.
decide what it is later, right? And that's
Yeah. Because
I've
I think
no
I'm
no
sorry,
you
go ahead.
no you
No, I was gonna say, I think what you said is, like, focusing on what's happening right now. Because sometimes you could be in a negative space, and then you realize, I want and I remember a friend telling me, like, "But nothing's happening right now." Like, what like, right at this moment, there's absolutely nothing happening, like, this is where is a good vibe, and if you're not in the present, you're gonna miss these good experiences, or just whatever experience. It could just be there. It could be just like literally nothing going on, but you have like this negative mood, and literally all is well. You know what I'm
yeah, yeah,
saying?
yeah. That's a good point. I never thought about that. I do know a
Nothing's
lot of people are
happening right
like, "This
now.
sucks. This sucks." It's like, "What sucks, man? We're just kicking it right now.
Yeah,
What are you talking
exactly.
about, bro?"
Yeah, because you probably thinking of some old stuff, and it's like, and we talked about like triggers, and like somebody may say something that brings you back, but like what forget what happened in the past, like right now. It's all
Yeah.
all is well. you know?
Yeah. Yeah.